Greetings, everyone. I'm Larry Williams, the Director of the Center for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, or CARMA, at Virginia Commonwealth University. And I'm pleased to welcome you to another edition of Meet the Methodologist on January 30, 2009. It's my pleasure to have this opportunity to chat with Karen Locke. Karen is the W. Brooks George Professor of Business Administration at the Mason School of Business and the College of William and Mary. It's really a pleasure to be able to spend this time with Karen, who's been contributing to CARMA for over 10 years. In 1998, she came and participated in our first mini-conference that we organized. In 1999, she did a workshop for us on grounded theory. And beginning in 2007, she's come and participated in our summer short course program, and she'll be offering a short course this upcoming summer on grounded theory. She's here because she's going to be doing a webcast lecture later on today as part of our CARMA Consortium webcast program. And Karen, we appreciate you participating in our webcast program and taking the time to share your perspective on your career and some research methods issues. So, welcome back.
Great to be here, Larry.
So, Karen, I usually like to start off by asking about how people got interested in research methods.
Well, I think I probably accreted into it over time. I made the decision while I was in the PhD program at Case fairly early that I wanted to do qualitative research. And so we're going back now sometime into the early 1980s, and there really just wasn't that much available. It's probably hard for people to believe when they see just how much is available on qualitative research now, but at that time there was very little. There was the original grounded theory book. There was nothing certainly published in our field of management and organization studies. And so as I started doing projects in which qualitative research was involved, I wanted to understand what it was that I was supposed to be doing and how to do it better, and that really led into it. So there was an absence of resources, and so there was a natural void there to step into.
And did you have a course, a particular methods course that helped develop that interest, and if so, which particular one?
Well, actually the interest came from my undergraduate days. So I did my undergraduate degree at University College in London, and in the European system you just read a single subject, so I read in psychology. Mm-hmm. And one of the courses that I took was actually ethology. And my honors thesis, I smile, was a study of the behavior of lowland gorillas. Mm-hmm. And so it was, no, it wasn't in Africa, but it was at Twycross, which is a zoo that's owned by a gambling mogul in the UK. And so it involved field trips out there, videotape, detailed conversion of the videotape into sort of the micro details of behavior. That really got me hooked. And so when I went back to the PhD program, I was very clear that I wanted to work in the area of qualitative research. I wanted to do that kind of field work.
Uh-huh. And Karen, as best you can recall, were there any particular challenges you faced in learning about research methods as a graduate student?
Probably the challenge was dealing with the realities on the ground, that it was just, everything was so much messier. Mm-hmm. I think probably that was the largest challenge.
Yeah. Well, you've come along and obviously had a very successful career, and you have considerable experience both as a reviewer and as an editor for research methods papers. Karen was an associate editor for organizational research methods. And so I'm wondering, Karen, whether you could comment on, given that experience, what you see as some of the most frequent limitations or shortcomings of the papers that you've reviewed.
I think maybe I'll do two categories. With the methods papers that came in that were focused on doing qualitative research into organization research methods, generally speaking, those papers really did not acknowledge the literature that is out there at this point in time. And so I can remember very early submissions where papers were essentially offering their new their qualitative approach, arguing that there weren't any methods texts or there weren't any approaches out there. And certainly I think within, again, management and organization studies, that work has been slow in coming, but there is a huge literature in anthropology and in sociology, increasingly in other disciplines like education, even human geography, and authors just aren't aware of that. I think part of that is sort of the institutional infrastructure that we have for teaching qualitative research. So that's on the research methods side. I think where I am, I'm on the editorial board for Academy of Management Journal. What happens there is the qualitative research approach, if you're using one that's largely inductive, you will just go through cycle after cycle of iteration in which you successively narrow, refine, and get clear about exactly what it is that your research has led you to understand. And I think with the empirical papers that are submitted, very often they're just analytically immature. So people are offering findings, but the analysis really isn't sufficiently developed or refined yet. And probably the relationship between the data that they have and exactly what their theoretical contribution isn't as clearly articulated as it could be. And so those two things, I think, in the empirical papers that I see coming into ANJ.
Yeah. And Karen, do you have a favorite research methods book that either influenced you greatly or upon which you now rely regularly?
Actually, I do have a favorite one. It goes back in time. In your introduction, Larry, you pointed out that I do work in the grounded theory approach. And many people cite, obviously, the original canonical grounded theory text that Glaser and Strauss wrote. I actually really like Anselm Strauss's. It's 1987, so it goes back a ways, but it's qualitative analysis for social scientists. And what he does there is he just provides a wonderful detailed account, giving illustrations of analytic discussions where they're exploring the implications of their data, what it might mean in his research seminars that he was conducting. And so it's just detailed and it shows you on the ground what working through the analytic process looks like. It's a favorite of mine.
Great. From a big picture perspective, Karen, are there topical areas within the field of research methods that you think we are doing a particularly good job of investigating or a particular bad job of investigating?
Well, again, within qualitative research, I think because in methods in general, we have so been dominated by the logic of validation that we have really paid very little attention to the what's called the logic of discovery. And so the whole area of how ideas are generated, I think we know very, very little about that creative process. And certainly I think with the work that's been going on in cognitive psychology, the brain research that's going on, I think sort of Popper's injunction that anything that was psychological we shouldn't pay attention to because it's non-scientific just doesn't make any sense anymore. And so what is the nature of the creative process? Certainly any particular approach, technical approach that we might use within that, we need to continue to refine and understand, but let's understand sort of the larger creative enterprise, which is what we all do for a living. So I would love to spend some resources doing that.
Yeah. Karen, in terms of the relationship between the quantitative side of our research and the qualitative side of our research, do you think there are any common misperceptions that quantitative researchers have about those who use qualitative approaches?
I don't know if I would say misperception. I think what I have experienced is, and this goes back to sort of what I was saying before, our training is so intensive in the hypothetico-deductive approach that we almost have a habitual response to think about things within the framework of a deductive logic. And so my experience is that almost unthinkingly, people who haven't worked in a more, quote, inductive or abductive framework just will ask questions and make assumptions out of that more deductive frame. And we say, well, no, that's not the kind of question that we should be thinking about here. It's not a question of sort of proving a relationship. Rather, it's about making a proposal, a proposition that's plausible, and I can lay out the evidence for that proposition. Well, what use of it is it if it isn't generalizable, statistically generalizable? Well, that's not, and so you have those kinds of exchanges, I think, because people, again, our training is so good, and the hypothetical deductive approach, it's just wired into us.
Yeah. Do you think, Karen, that we've made progress in the organizational studies area in the use of mixed methods approaches to our research?
It seems that many more people, I think many more people are open to either forms of research. The difficulty is obviously if you have building the deep experience in one, it's pretty hard to move back and forth, but certainly at AMJ, I've seen several manuscripts coming across the transom which include both approaches.
And looking back over 10 or 15 years, what changes have you seen in the area of qualitative methods by organizational researchers?
I'm not sure that there have been huge changes. I think certainly the number of people getting involved in qualitative research has increased. Maybe one thing that I'm perhaps a little sad to see is there are fewer, or not as many as I would like to see, ethnographic, and by ethnographic I mean sort of year-long investments in the field. I see a lot of interview-based studies, and while those have value and have their place, there's nothing better to understand what is happening in a social system than going there and spending a year living with people and really being a part of how they do their work and how they just manage their circumstances on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Well, given that comment, let me take that as the opportunity to let people know that we do have a CARMA short course that we'll be offering in May on ethnographic methods that will be conducted by Mike Pratt in addition to the one that Karen does. We'll be doing on grounded theory. Karen, kind of on a more personal side, do you do anything special to draw inspiration or motivation for your work?
Read broadly. So I read outside of management. I read a lot of sociology. I might read in neuroscience. Just read broadly is probably what I do most.
Yeah. And do you have particular parts of your work and the things that you do on a daily basis that you like the most and that you like the least?
Like the most. Spending time, if I can, sort of with ideas and with data. It's a great day if I'm trying to work through and make sense of a set of observations that I have, or an interview that I've conducted. The least favorite is probably taking those and working my way down to a clear theoretical statement out of them, because it's just work and frustration.
It can be painful.
It's a painful process. But I guess knowing one of the things you don't appreciate when you start out in this is that is the nature of the process. And so as you're sort of struggling because you're working with a theoretical category and it kind of hangs together, but then when you go and write it out in detail, it doesn't quite fit. You encounter that frustration, or you show your work to someone else and they're not convinced by it. You have to, okay, now I have to go back and rework it because there's nothing theoretically interesting in what you're doing, or it doesn't quite fit. That's really frustrating. But when you understand, later on you understand, oh, so that's just an iteration that you have to go through, and getting things not quite right is a step on the way to getting things better, that it sort of goes away.
Yeah. As a last question, Karen, do you have any career advice that you'd like to offer to aspiring qualitative methodologists?
I think one of the misconceptions out there is that you can't make a career if you choose as a graduate student to pursue qualitative research. I think that's just not true. You can. It just, as any other approach, it has to be work in which you make a major investment, and you need to become a master of the process that it takes to arrive at good qualitative projects. I think certainly the opportunity is out there. Make sure, though, I said when I started out, very often because we don't have a strong infrastructure in PhD programs of qualitative research methods courses, that you may have to reach outside your program to places like CARMA or to other places to make sure that you are well grounded in the resources that are available to support you. And as part of that, probably there's a community of qualitative researchers. You need to reach out to them. So there is opportunity. You probably may need, depending on where you are, to seek out resources outside, and then take the steps that you need to become a part of the qualitative research community in the academy.
All right. Karen, we appreciate you taking the time on your visit here to share your reactions to your career in the field of research methods. And as I said earlier, we're grateful for your past contributions to CARMA, and we look forward to those continuing. And let me invite our viewers to visit the CARMA website and learn about Karen's short course as well as all the short courses we do. Thanks again, Karen.
Thanks, Larry.